In case you're just joining us, this conference is part of a joint effort between Farm Foundation and the USDA Economic Research Service to promote discussion about the design, implementation, and evaluation of agricultural policy and its impact on diverse farms and farmers who each face different opportunities and challenges. Today, we have a fantastic series of research presentations. Session 4 will feature papers focusing on how diversity may affect market entry and market demand. This includes research that brings consumer valuation into the discussion. And finally, Session 5 features research thinking about how farm size can affect farm diversification and land use decisions, as well as shape the opportunities and challenges for producers. But before we get into the research presentations later today, we are first going to hear from a variety of industry experts. We are now joined by Dr. Rainey, Professor, Assistant Vice President, and Center Director at the University of Arkansas Division of Agriculture, Sylvester Miller, U.S. Crop Technology Market Manager at FMC, Fabiola Perez, Global Product Planner, Planters at John Deere, Ryan Locke, Director of Sustainability Partnerships at Nutrien Ag Solutions, Kellie Adesina, Director of Federal Government Affairs at Kraft Heinz, and Libby Washburn, Associate CEO of the Native American Agriculture Fund. Good morning, and thank you all for joining us today. Dr. Rainey, I will hand it over to you.
Sorry. Good morning. Thank you all for joining us this morning. We have a very talented and diverse panel, and so I'm just going to get quickly into the discussion, but I want to start just by giving everyone an opportunity to give a brief introduction and talk about the things that they do in their world. And I'll start with Ms. Kellie.
Sure. Good morning. Thank you to the Farm Foundation and the Economic Research Services for having me here as a panel. As was stated, my name.
I think Kellie froze. So in the interest of time, I'm going to go on to Miss Libby, I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. My name is Libby Washburn, and I'm the Associate CEO for the Native American Agriculture Fund, or NAF, as we like to call it. I'm a citizen of the Chickasaw Nation of Oklahoma. Happy to be here today.
Ms. Kellie.
So NAF is the charitable trust that was created in relation to the settlement of the Keepseagle versus Vilsack litigation, which many of you might recall. We're the largest philanthropic organization focused solely on Native American farming and ranching communities. We give out hundreds of grants. We currently have a little over 300 grants. They're out there to eligible organizations, and we fund things such as business assistance, agriculture education, technical support, and advocacy services for Native farmers and ranchers. We currently have a request for applications out on the street. It opened up on Friday, and it's open for the next 2 months. It'll close at the beginning of May. I encourage everybody to look at the opportunity. I wanted to give just really quick statistics on Native American agriculture, just because it's not on everybody's radar. So the 2022 Census of Agriculture, as you know, just came out, and there's some key points on Native Americans in agriculture. So agriculture is the #1 driver of economic development and economic services in Indian country. It has long been one of the leading economic drivers, and the recent census solidified that it still is, with more than $6 billion in revenue in 2022, with more than 58,000 farms that are owned by tribal producers. So $6 billion in revenue. This almost doubles the economic growth that we saw in the census data from 2017, despite a pandemic, an economic downturn, and some significant weather events that have impacted Indian country. Also wanted to highlight that tribal producers and tribes are working very hard to reclaim stewardship of land. And so in 2022, the census showed that Native producers were farming and ranching on 63 million acres of land. That's an increase of 5 million acres from 2017. Most Native producers are specializing in livestock production. Tribal cattle operation revenues totaled $3.4 billion in 2022, and the crop production values for Native producers nearly doubled from $1.4 billion in 2017 to $2.7 billion in 2022. So just wanted to throw that out there. We think there is immense potential for enhancing production on tribal lands. We think that this also simultaneously supports tribal economies and contributes to the national ag output. So we think, though, that the key thing is more connections, more partnerships. We've funded hundreds of projects, as I noted, and we're about to fund probably dozens and dozens more, upward of 50 or 60. And people are doing interesting things using these grants. I encourage you to reach out to us, to look on our website and see what these native producers are doing, what these nonprofits and tribes are kind of trying to creatively think of different ways to increase agriculture output and education. We have a report on our website. We put it out a couple of years ago. It's called Reimagining Native Food Economies. And it really documents how we can work together, how relationships with agriculture can help increase ag infrastructure in rural areas, which is one of the biggest problems that we see. But it's on our website. I encourage you to look at it. Sorry if I was too long. I'm happy to pass it on to the next person. Thanks.
Thanks, Libby, and appreciate that background information to get us started. Kellie, apologize, you kind of froze up. I'm going to go back to you. So I think we got your name and organization, but please go ahead again.
Sorry about that, technology. I mentioned I've worked at Kraft Heinz, but prior to Kraft Heinz, I was at Bayer in a similar role as a lobbyist. Essentially, I talked to elected officials and administration officials about legislative and regulatory issues that are important to my company. And then I spent about 10 years working for the federal government, 9 years on Capitol Hill in several roles, the last one being on the House Agriculture Committee as the chief counsel during the 2018 Farm Bill, and also spent time at USDA in the Office of the General Counsel. And thank you very much for having me here this morning.
Thank you so much. And next we'll go to you, Ms. Fabiola.
Good morning, everyone. Fabiola Perez. I'm the global product planner for our planter product family at John Deere. In this role, I'm responsible for ensuring that the R&D and portfolio strategy we're executing on is delivering customer and business value. I'm a native to California, but I've lived in a bunch of different states across the U.S. Throughout my career at Deere. I grew up in and around ag, and I studied at Cal Poly Pomona, and I have a BS in plant science and ag business. During my time with Deere, I've worked across tons of different platforms, multiple crop production systems across North America, South America, and Europe. I stay engaged with understanding ag issues through my work at Deere and through my involvement with organizations such as Manners, CAPCA, and Farm Foundation. I'm a Next Gen alum and a fellow at Farm Foundation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Next, we'll go to you, Mr. Sylvester.
Yep. Good morning, everybody. Sylvester Miller. I am now the regional business manager for our Central Corn Belt division. When we first did this bio and everything, I was the U.S. crop technology market manager, where I was in charge of the Thrive 3D platform along with our Precision Pack platform for North America. Inside my current role that just got announced and starting yesterday, I now will be overseeing our retail market managers inside Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, and Missouri. Currently, right now, I live inside Memphis, Tennessee for the next couple of months before relocating back to the Des Moines area of Iowa, where I originally was before returning back to the South. Outside of my corporate ag career, I'm a fourth-generation farmer. My family farm in Helena, Arkansas, which is a heritage farm, which my dad grew up on before leaving the farm. And then also my family, my direct family own farmland inside Buchanan, Michigan. For anyone that needs a geolocation on that one, that would be about 45 minutes northwest of South Bend, Indiana, where the College of Notre Dame sits. I am a University of Kentucky graduate from the Martin Gatton College of Ag, Family Environmental Services, with a bachelor's inside Ag Econ. Currently, right now, sit on multiple boards, along with Farm Foundation, Manners, being some of the top boards that I sit on. And then also do a lot of mentoring for young kids inside agriculture, while also helping with kids, getting them involved in agriculture. I'm glad to be here today.
Great, thank you. And then lastly, Mr. Ryan.
Good morning, everyone. My thanks to the panelists and to the Farm Foundation and others for the opportunity to join this group this morning. I'm Ryan Locke. I'm the Director of Sustainability Partnerships and Business Development for Nutrien Ag Solutions, as well as a first-generation producer from Omaha, Nebraska. During the day, I work with Nutrien on our sustainable ag strategy, which puts growers first and foremost into the discussion of the sustainability economy. So that's sustainability in all factors that it actually applies to. So that's operational sustainability, agronomic sustainability. We're engaged both in the metrics side of the conversation as well as policy. I have a background in policy as well as commercial business with most of the tier 1 organizations on the retail and supplier side of business. Not a native to agriculture, but was pulled in and fell in love with it and have devoted my career to it in a variety of ways, both professionally. I'll be the third person to mention Minorities in Agriculture, or the Manners organization. Deeply involved with the work that they're doing there. I mentor, sit on the board for the Omaha Urban Ag Academy. Try to make sure that I make myself available at any time that there is an opportunity to advocate, and you did hear me say that, advocate for the industry, and to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that this is an enduring industry for everyone that's involved in it. Looking forward to the conversation.
Well, great. Thank you all for making time to join us today, and thank Farm Foundation for this fantastic opportunity. And so we have a diverse background. And so I just want to start out just kind of picking your minds a little bit, and I'll start back at the top with Kellie. I'll ask each of you this question. What is the most pressing issue that you see facing our diverse or our marginalized farmers across the country? Kellie?
Thank you for the question. I think that I was just at a conference last week, and it was geared towards specifically Black farmers. And there was a lot of, I think, frustration and angst amongst the farmers because often we hear about different programs that are put in place. And when you talk about who actually benefits from said programs, the intended audience doesn't always get those benefits. And so a good example, of course, is around the economically distressed funds that were targeted to those who are, had difficult times. It was stemmed from the coronavirus, money from the last couple of years, and how it started originally was for farmers of color. And then there was, litigation around that. And so then it, changed to economically distressed farmers. And then when we look at that, the population of people who really get those funds, it tends to shift because of political, issues and things of that nature. And so I think there still is this disconnect when it comes to equity issues. Understandably, farmers of all backgrounds, are having a difficult time, given the economy. But, typically when that occurs, farmers of color are impacted even more so. And so I think that we still have this need to make sure that legislation is targeted in a way that it really gets to the population that needs it. And perhaps it's moving past maybe equity and thinking about what are the systemic issues. So for example, for many Black farmers, there's issues around heirs property. And so perhaps instead of, targeting legislation to address equity issues, you target legislation to address heirs property. So you're still getting to the community that actually needs the assistance, but you're being a little bit more specific and narrow with your focus. So I still think there's a need to make sure that policy is more responsive and still getting to the needs that the people actually need to be addressed.
Great. Libby, what are your thoughts?
Thank you. I totally agree with everything that Kellie said. It's definitely what we're seeing in the Native communities as well. So some of the things to highlight with Native communities is the lack of financial literacy, the lack of a strong credit history. We see problems with that on a daily basis. We also have the problem with land being held in trust by the federal government. So many pieces of these property the tribes own the property, but it's held in trust. And people that are loaning money don't understand it, and it's hard for Native farmers to get collateral and credit. It's hard for them to get loans when they're dealing with this type of trust land. And so we're trying to promote more education around this space. I think sometimes we've had great strides in the last several years, but there's just more education to do. And I think, it's just a kind of a broader campaign of letting people understand that it is slightly different, but they shouldn't avoid it. They should look for opportunities to work with tribes as well. Thanks.
Great. Ms. Perez?
I think in a lot of the Hispanic or Latino communities, there's a lack of awareness or feeling like there's no access to some of the programs that are available. In many cases, there's also a language barrier. In California, at least, has been doing a lot of work to translate or promote different programs or projects in Spanish and in English to try to target those Spanish-speaking communities. But I would say that there's still a lot of work just to provide awareness and help farmers and in the Hispanic community understand that they have access to those opportunities. But if you don't know that it's out there, then it's hard to go after them. So I would point to those two as being big barriers for the Hispanic community.
Great. Thank Mr. Sylvester.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's kind of hit it on the head that we're talking about, access and knowledge of what's going on. I mean, either from private and public sector opportunities. I'll probably say, being a grower myself, it always seems to be a conversation that pops up at a coffee shop and saying, hey, are you aware that this is going on? And this, that, and the other when it comes to any type of USDA grant or opportunity there. But surely when we talk about, access to financing and those type of things that will help us be more operationally sound instead of having to reach directly into the family piggy bank and those be able to operate. I mean, I think that's big. I mean, even when I've now looked lately with a couple of my friends that are looking to acquire, farmland and talking to them about some of the ag lending that USDA actually provides, them not being aware of that. And these aren't people that would say that are uneducated, just one of those ones of knowing where to search for where things are and where to go get them from, and them having to work with just a regular bank and those pieces there. So I think surely need to do a better job around education, knowledge, and access. And then also when we look at from ag manufacturers being where those growers are and customers are, and let them be aware of what is, how the new coming down the pipeline, what opportunities do we have, what self-finance opportunities that are offered through our manufacturing companies to that population is really big to us. And, looking at FMC, we do have someone that is targeted with that brand and dog, such as working with the underserved and underrepresented growers at our company.
Good. Thanks, Mr. Ryan.
Well, the trouble after coming at the end of a trail of such phenomenal thought leaders is they have very much covered the point. But I will steal from both Mr. Miller and Ms. Perez to say it is access, and it's access across a variety of platforms and formats. We have benefited from the amount of attention that has been put on underrepresented producers, but too often when those conversations are happening about how do we engage in those spaces, those populations are not at the table. And so how can we actually effectively solve the issues and the systemic problems that exist if we are not engaging those communities in the solutions? We may be bringing solutions to them, but we are not engaging them in how those solutions are crafted. And so do they ultimately end up being a fit? Mr. Miller hit on the other piece of this, which is the business of ag is a relationship-driven business, and too often, both in the retail and the commercial suppliers side of this, there's not a relationship with these underrepresented groups and these underrepresented producers, and people buy from people. And so too often, the sales rep truck drives by those operations chasing other business opportunities and doesn't take the time to stop at that farm gate and build the level of business trust that's necessary for someone to engage with them. We all know that the business of farming is personal. The land is personal. There's a family legacy attached to it, and too many mistakes, and that legacy is lost. That puts a lot of pressure on producers, and so we have to really think differently about how we approach the business.
No, great points. There's definitely a theme of awareness and access, the importance of relationship. So, Mr. Ryan, I'll let you go first with this one. But so USDA just launched its equity commission report. I don't know if you all are familiar with it or have read it. 66 recommendations, but you can speak to that report or things that are happening in industry. You mentioned solutions in this space of raising awareness and engagement. Anything in that report or in industry that you see that's exciting that should be expanded or built upon?
Appreciate the question. Ultimately, the most exciting thing that I am experiencing in this space alludes back to my first answer, which is we are doing the work to bring these underrepresented groups to the table when the solutions are being crafted, not just coming back when the program's built and saying, well, hey, here's this wonderful program that you have access to, and then producers don't apply because it does not work for their businesses. It does not work. Too often, if you look at underrepresented, and Libby put some of the points forward, Sylvester put some of the points forward, these operations do not look like the quote unquote stereotypical typical operation. And so thus the approach and how we get them access to capital and how we engage with them for technology adoption, sustainability work is different. And so that's what I'm most excited about. And it includes the work of the Equity Commission and the work that the USDA is doing in shifting some of that, we'll say, ideation work and involving the people that are actually to benefit and that we're actually trying to access.
Great. And I'll shift to you, Libby, because you highlighted some specific even regulatory issues that Native Americans face, but that same question, opportunities that you see in that Equity Commission report and things that are exciting to you today.
Thank you. I appreciate this. And I want to look at it, maybe take a step back. The fact that we have this report is amazing. And, the fact that the administration highlighted equity from day one, and then USDA is, kind of leading first one out, getting this report out there. I think it's a start. I think it's a great start to continue to build on. I think there's a lot of good things in there. I think there's more to happen and do, but I think just being at the table, being able to have this opportunity to have this report out there in this first term and having people focused on it, having the agency focused on it. All of the federal agencies are working on similar reports within the federal government. And I think it just helps us overall to have our profile raised. And so thrilled to have that. Our CEO was on the Equity Commission and worked to draft the report. So I'm going to say it's fabulous. We think that it's great work. There is more to happen. And, I think it was hard to get everybody to come together to agree on things, but again, just a good first start.
Great.
Dr. Rainey, can I jump in here for a second?
Absolutely.
I think going, along those same lines, what stood out to me was the fact that not only was it diverse in terms of, demographics, ethnic backgrounds, but also diversity in thought. I think that's really important in the conversation. The fact that you have people, from, commodity groups, you have, folks from, a former, now deputy ag secretary, you had, actual farmers, just having, different perspectives as well was really important, I think, in the conversation, because it just goes to show you too, there are some people there that have experience in, rural, issues, some have experience in urban farming. So just to have that, diversity of thought was also really important. And I was really proud to see what the commission was able to come up with.
Great. Fabiola, Sylvester, y'all want to jump in as well? I'll start with Ms. Fabiola, if you wish.
I really appreciated your comment, Kelly, because when I think about agriculture, it's not just farming. Like farming is the foundation of agriculture, but we do so much more, right? And it's really food and ag, they go together. So having that spectrum of segments represented, I think it's key to have a better understanding of where we're going and where we are as an industry, and not just thinking about it as just farming. So just wanted to add that there.
Now, that's a great point. Mr. Sylvester, thoughts?
Yeah, I say, I think we touched on everything that needs to be touched on. I mean, I guess when I look at conversation having with other producers and people inside the industry, like I said, really happy that this has came out and we're able to point at something now to be able to help drive people to take action on. But surely, as I was talking to some of the growers at Commodity Classic, a lot of them are surely finding ways to, for those that are non-row crop producers, how do they access and get more support from the USDA and overall the industry. So I think it's something which we should have to keep in mind. And I know that we touched on that ag is more than just row crop production, more than just commodity crops, but how do some of those specialties and some of the different things that people are doing around ag tourism and different things like the ag education can help drive new ways of income into their actual farm and be able to help with some of that sustainability and financing.
Oh, great. And so the beauty for me, having worked in the ag sector for over 30 years, is that agriculture is really community and really is the driver of the economies in many of those rural areas. So in today's day and age, you know, we have the internet and we have all these social media activities. So it seems like there's almost, at a time when there's information overload, there's different segments that aren't getting information or they don't have the relationships to be looped in. So how should we overcome this information transmission, this problem of how information is so pervasive nowadays, but we hear people aren't getting access to USDA or have awareness of USDA programs or even other programs within that industry's offering? How do we make that a much more transparent transmission? And I'll start with you, Kellie.
Great question. All of them been good questions, so kudos to you. So I think part of it is, tapping into different networks. So one of the things I didn't mention earlier is that a few years ago, some colleagues and I, we started this organization called Black Professionals in Food and Agriculture. And mainly it started off as, policy professionals working in this space. We felt there was a need to support one another, build community, amplify what was going on with as it pertained to Black farmers. And when we started up the organization, one of the first things we did, we created a LinkedIn page. LinkedIn is great for just connecting, networking, so on and so forth. But when we created that group, next thing we knew, like people from all different professional backgrounds wanted to be a part of that group because they wanted to have that community, wanted to be able to share information. And so it started off as something that was strictly for policy professionals working in the space, but it now has grown to just about, any Black professional who's working in this area. And so we often share information that way, just a grassroots way. But, there are also, thinking about the broader way to share information, there are a lot of great organizations that are doing work and providing technical assistance. And so the fact that USDA provides grants to support some of these organizations so they can provide technical assistance to the farmers that need it, that's also very key. And then the last thing I'll say, because I don't want to take up too much because other people may have good ideas and I don't want to steal all their thunder, but, just kind of extension, extension services are very important to our communities. And I think to continue to support them, make sure they have the resources that they need so that they can help the community is really key.
Great. Mr. Sylvester?
Yeah, Ron, I mean, when I think about that question, I mean, I think when we look at what is being rolled out to us is doing pretty good job. But I think as we touched on access, especially when we touched on rural America and kind of how we're the backbone of things. It was, I think it might have been Secretary Vilsack at NBGC that kind of brought it out, or maybe someone else, when they talk about rural America and the strength of it, that, yeah, rural America makes, I think, 10% of the population lives in rural America, but over 60% of our military comes out of rural America. So, I mean, when we talk about agriculture and it being part of national security, yes, food security, any of the world powers Agriculture is surely the backbone. Second is surely your military. So usually when we look at a lot of our allies or other world powers, agriculture and military go together. So I think that's one thing that we surely need to think about is where, maybe the people inside the big cities that are making bylaws and rules and bills that affect those inside rural America and look out for, I don't want to say looking for themselves, but look out for the best interest. We need to start looking really what does rural America actually need, because if not, as we start to decimate more and more of those small rural towns without having the ability for kids to go back, work on the family farm, work at the local ag retailer or maybe local grocery store, we will start seeing a domino effect of not only affecting our ag economy and our strength of people, human power there, but also the effect that it can have in the long run of our military and those that we actually depend on to be able to serve out there for us inside America.
Great. Ms. Fabiola, thoughts?
On the point of information overload, I mean, I think that's a big piece of why maybe there's why some of the communities see opportunities as like there's like barriers to access, and it's because maybe they don't understand it, or it's too complicated, or they don't know who to call to ask questions, or maybe there's a number but they don't, it's a machine, or they run into these issues. And to your point about, or to the group's point about community, at the end of the day, boots on the ground is how we make the biggest impact. So USDA might be putting out some great programs out there, but if it's at this level and not at the ground level where it's being projected like on a widespread email or online or whatever, but it's not boots on the ground with people who can answer questions, engaging in those communities, I think it's going to be hard for people to really take advantage of those programs and those opportunities because they typically would have like questions about, how does this work? Well, does it apply to me? Am I too big? Am I too small? If I'm over here, I grow this crop. Like there's all these little details that sometimes we get, people get lost in the details and then they miss those opportunities. So I think to deal with information overload, we need to, like, it's great that we're putting programs out and opportunities out at a high level, but getting it to those communities, boots on the ground with people engaging in those communities is going to be key to enable access and get people to take advantage of those.
No, good. Mr. Ryan?
I'm going to briefly touch on two of the themes that I've kind of picked up from the other panelists' answers. One is engagement. The other one is community. On the engagement side of things, I've already said this is a trust and relationship-driven business. And so when it comes to information overload, people then gravitate to information sources or quote unquote people that they trust. But that doesn't always mean that the information is correct or that it fits, their situation. And so really the thought leaders, the program originators need to make sure, again, that they're putting in the work to build that trusted advisor status so that that community does feel comfortable going direct to them. No one knows the program better than the program originator. No one knows the inner workings of the USDA than the USDA when it comes to how you qualify, how you fill out the application, et cetera. You can obviously have a community and network of people that you bring into that conversation, but ultimately you need to have that relationship directly with who you're trying to engage with. On the community side of things, I want to expand on something Fabiola said. The community of agriculture looks significantly different today, and I think we need to take that into account. I've been doing a lot of work with urban farms and got engaged with someone in the Indianapolis area, and she found out that if she were outside the city limits, she could get $100,000 to dig a well, but because she was inside the city limits, she couldn't get half that amount in order to be able to tie into the city water system to do irrigation for her vertical farming operation. That has to change. Ag is ag, and the USDA's mandate, it is the United States Department of Agriculture, and that should be agriculture in all of its forms. So again, we have to embrace the entirety of the community of ag because that's the way that ag will survive.
Good. Miss Libby?
You you're right, Ryan. This is tough coming last after everybody gave such good answers. I will try to highlight where tribes are maybe just a little bit different. So, in this respect, maybe not. So many tribal lands are lacking broadband. And, everybody knows it's a problem. A lot of money has been put to it. It's a slow process to build that broadband. But things that can happen where we could get the word out and try to get the information out into Indian country to the native producers. So USDA is standing up a tribal advisory committee, and they've brought in key individuals from around the country. That helps to, similar to what Kellie said, creating this network that then the information will trickle down and we can get it out to the broader community. Also, the federal government works with tribes through a process called tribal consultation. So there have been numerous executive orders by various presidents ranging back decades that say this is the way that the government is going to work with tribes. They're going to consult with them. So many things that happen on tribal lands are guided by the federal government. Social services, water, grazing, all sorts of things. They have a say in how these things happen. And what the president has said, numerous presidents, is if you're going to have this much say over it, you need to consult the tribes. And so they do these tribal consultations. They're often national in level. Sometimes they'll do multiple consultations. It used to be that they would go out to the different regions. Many of them are now done online, but hundreds of people join, sometimes thousands, for these consultation sessions where the federal government can talk about, this is the decision we're going to make, this is what we're looking at. And then the tribes have the ability to weigh in and say, we think this is a really bad idea. We hope you'll rethink it. And then they're often given the opportunity to provide written comments as well. This has been a game changer in letting tribes have a say, letting the tribal voice in. And USDA has done a great job in many respects of building their consultation programs. And, more work always to be done in this space. And we hope that through the Farm Bill and others, we can get better, stronger consultation. But we have seen an uptick of number of consultations in the last few years, and trying to get it to a point where more people can participate. So thank you.
Great. I'm going to move from this topic, but I really want to reiterate some of the points that you highlight, because I think it really is critical. And I think Ryan highlighted when we talked about engagement in community, the role that trust and relationships play, and the importance that when we engage in communities, that we have people that can be culturally competent and people that look like us. That's one of the easiest ways to give correct information to people that have that shared experience to really build that trust out. So I appreciate you highlighting all those points. Hopefully we can move forward and have some new innovations coming forward. But I want to change the page to just as important, because one of the things when we look at diverse farm communities, and agriculture is diverse. And I think in some ways, some of the minority communities may be underreported because they're unaware of even USDA. So as we look to the next generation, or how do we get more people, the next gen, into ag? And I want to start with you, Ms. Fabiola, because I think that you came out of a next gen program. USDA just announced their next gen program. What are some ways that we can raise the awareness of agriculture as a career, even as STEM, in terms of student engagement, in terms of the level of technology that is involved in ag today? What are your thoughts in this space of how do we engage the next generation?
This is something that I talk about more than I need to. And I think about this often because I have my job at Deere, but I also support our John Deere Mainers recruiting team and our John Deere Ship recruiting team. And when we go out to different recruiting events, like for example, Ship, where it's a Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, and you're recruiting against the Apples and the Teslas and the Nikes and the Disneys of the world. There we are with our big John Deere booth, and everyone's attracted to like the Tesla and the Apple and all of these things. And it's like, well, we have all these great opportunities too. We have competitive salaries and et cetera. we're a global company. And I think a lot of times as an industry, because they're STEM too, right? So in many ways. So it's like, how do we create that excitement to, to the next generation to be like, yeah, agriculture, it's cool. It's the future. It's exciting. And I think the way sometimes we talk about agriculture or the way we see agriculture portrayed in media, it maybe pushes people away, and we need to change that dynamic. When I grew up in ag, my family is in ag, and growing up, when I was telling them, I'm going to go to college and study this, and when I told them I was going to study agriculture, they were like, why? Like, don't you go to college to get out of ag? And that was like my community's thing. They're like, you're crazy. Like, what you're doing it the wrong way. And we need to do work to change the way ag is perceived. And again, ag is not just farming. It's so much more than that. And we need to just get engaged in our communities and show people that it's not just, what they see on TV, and it's not just what it's maybe been in the past, but it's so much more, and there's so much more opportunity. So I think it takes every one of us to continue to, to represent ag in the different groups that we participate in our communities, to show the next generation that it's not that, that there's a lot of opportunity, and it is great, and it is important, and it is cool. It's not just like in California, it's not just harvesting fruits and vegetables. It's so much more. It's about autonomy. It's about precision ag. It's about policy. Anything that they think is cool about Tesla or Apple, we're doing it in ag, and we're probably doing it better. So we just need to continue to bring people on that journey with us.
Great, great. Ms. Kellie, thoughts?
Yeah, I think that a couple things. It starts with us, first and foremost. Like, people, if they feel like they can see it, then they can, be it. And so continuing to have these conversations, showing up in different spaces. But I also think the industry has to do some reflection as well to ensure that this is an inviting place. Often, when I worked on policy issues, working on farm bills, I was one or two of the only people in the room that looked like me. And, fortunately, I was raised in a family where, I was always taught that I bring something to the table, that I was special. So I had this very high sense of self, but some people don't have that. I grew up, probably unlike many of the panelists, I'm from Newark, New Jersey, a very urban area. It's called Brick City. We have high rises. I didn't grow up in ag. But one of the things I always relate to is that, most people, we have something in common. We all want access to safe, affordable, and nutritious foods. And so we have to make sure that when we're talking to people, that we're not talking to them in a way that makes them feel like they don't belong for whatever reason, because they didn't grow up on a farm, because, they're not white, because they're not from the South, like whatever the different things are. We need to make sure that people feel like there is a place and a space for them. And also when we're recruiting, these young people, we often, and when I worked at Bayer, for example, you often send people to the Midwest. That's where a lot of the, different facilities are. A lot of those communities are not very diverse. And so when you're sending a young, Black, Hispanic, Native American, young person, right, to these areas, it may be really hard for them to adapt. And so perhaps there needs to be some conversation around maybe not just sending one, maybe you can have two or three. So there's a sense of community, or if there are people there already, making sure that, they have folks that they can welcome them to that community, or give them resources. Hey, here's a soul food restaurant that you may want to think about, but it's the little things, right? And so I think there are things that we can do internally. I think the industry is doing that, but we can do more, because I know we can.
Okay, great. Sylvester?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at agriculture, surely as we look at the next generation, I think we should have touched on is all of us being advocates. I mean, everyone hears when you hear the good stories about agriculture, it always like sparks the kids' mind when I talk to some of my mentees. But the thing is that, as Kellie touched on, we've had a lot of people that have came into agriculture that have been minorities and placed inside areas where they haven't been able to be successful, such as, the community piece, just because you say, hey, it's great territory and this, that, and the other. We are social people. We do need some socialization also we've seen some people leave the industry. And granted, that becomes a conversation piece that kind of echoes back to plenty of people. I mean, even when you think, and I think Fabiola touched on, is even when we look at the way in which ag is brought forward. I mean, I think agricultural wise, I think the only movies that ever touched on agriculture was Field of Dreams and now Yellowstone. I mean, that's pretty much it. But I think as we look at, agriculture, ways to be able to shine a nice positive light on it, get us inside the, Super Bowl commercial, get us on some, FFA's national convention being shown not only on RFD TV, but maybe on national television to get a chance to see there. I think all of us, when we come to other organizations, NBGC, manners, and those type of things, really getting around the kids, but also still going to be a reach back. I mean, a lot of schools have removed, home ec, STEM's trying to make a hard comeback. I mean, a lot of the things that, that we grew up inside school around, maybe a little school garden, those type of things have been removed, and those need to come back. I mean, I think when you look at the issue that we have with attracting people over to agriculture, and some of the things that we have with attracting people into what we say is kind of the blue collar, hard work type industries. I mean, I know my friends in all the different trades are saying the same thing. We can't get plumbers, pipe fitters, and all those type of things. And kids really understand that, hey, we do pay well inside agriculture. I mean, agriculture is the world's largest economy with the least amount of people in it, and really understand where they fit. And then I think that's also one thing that we need to do, and Kellie touched on it, when we do recruit, where do we place people to be successful? Also, us that are inside agriculture, being truthful and honest with the fact that we're just not trying to fill a role, but really get a kid to understand where they're going to be successful. I mean, as I talk to plenty of kids at career fairs, not the fact that we got into FMC, really getting a chance to deep dive into what they like, what they enjoy. I might say, hey, sounds like you're a person that wants to be around equipment. Hey, go see the John Deere, the Case IH, and those people over there. If you're a person that says, hey, do you want to be, hunting for your own meal inside a rural area, and they say yes, then hey, come over inside ag sales. Let's get it done. But you're one that says, no, you know what? I don't know if that's worked for me, but I do want to be out there, but still kind of maybe inside a little cityness. Then I say, hey, you probably need to be looking at USDA Ag Extension and get a chance to be there. So I think also that's what we need to do, is really understand those that we're hiring, just because they seem to be great on paper, really get to know them personally and help guide them where you feel like their career will be more successful in the long run.
Good. Libby?
Thank you. This is definitely something that NAF is thinking about on a daily basis. And we have funded dozens and dozens of projects focused on schools, universities that are providing this type of support to try to encourage students to go into agriculture. I think at the University of Arkansas, we fund a program where students fly into Arkansas and they spend a week doing intensive study in agriculture, finance, law, and other areas. We have entered into an agreement with Haskell Indian Nation University just recently, a couple weeks ago, where they're going to build some degree programs around native finance and lending. It's an area where we just don't have enough resources and not enough people are going into this space. So we're starting to put our money into places where we can create more degree programs and more opportunities. We also created, and it's now its own entity. It's called TAF, the Tribal Agriculture Fellowship. And we support students in agriculture in a variety of ways. And it's a freestanding nonprofit now, but it's something that we supported and spun off. So we're constantly looking for ways to increase our touch in this area.
Great. Ryan, thoughts?
I'm going to stay in my seat, but I'm going to get on my soapbox a little, because this is an area that I'm extremely passionate about, and respectfully, I'll even push back a little bit on some of the other panelists. I started my career, and my first assignment was Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and that is definitely not a diverse area either. But I will tie into what Kellie said. It's about the support system. And I have been extremely fortunate in my career journey in agriculture, because I have been supported. And even though I have often been the only minority in the room, and when I say only minority, racial and gender. I found a community, but that has not always been the case. And having been a senior leader in a lot of these organizations and have been involved in the recruiting and the succession planning and hearing things about diverse candidates like, well, they're not ag enough. Well, that's a dog whistle. That we really need to remove those biases because, again, the face of agriculture has to change. Agriculture is changing. How it manifests is changing, and the people that will make it successful are and need to change. And so it is really critical as we look at that next generation of agriculture and that next generation of recruiting that we take that into account. We need those outside ideas. We need that diversity of thought. As Kellie said earlier, we need that diversity of perspective in order for us to be successful and bring the new ideas to the industry. So we really have to self-examine and make sure that we are removing some of those biases out of what makes someone successful in this business. I grew up in the suburbs, not quite as high rise as Miss Kellie, but at the end of the day, ag was a completely foreign commodity or foreign industry to me until I went to college. And even when I went to college, it was to become a veterinarian. And thankfully, ag, from a production standpoint, grabbed me, shook me, and said, come over here. And I have been blessed to celebrate almost 20 years in this business because, again, I was supported when I got here, supported to come and supported when I got here. And so we have to make sure that both sides of that coin are addressed, making sure that people are being brought into the business. And then once they are in the business, that they are supported both personally and professionally to stay.
No, great. And we're under 2 minutes, so I don't think we have enough time for a question for everyone. But anyone have any closing thoughts that they would just like to echo out under 1 minute if you can? No one? Well, if not, I just want to echo your thoughts on the importance of relationship. I love the conversation that you had about the different organizations. I am a product of both 4-H and FFA. Even though I'm in rural America, if I hadn't come through 4-H and FFA, I don't think I would be working in agriculture today. So those organizations like Manners, those different experiential learning experiences that we provide to our students, I think are critical to plugging our next gen in and expanding their version or their vision of agriculture beyond just the production sector. It's a global economy, the most important sector globally. So it's exciting to be working in ag, and I appreciate you all's time today. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Miss Morgan and let her close us out. Miss Martha, I'm sorry.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Rainey. Thank you to all of our panelists for the great discussion, your advice, and thank you for sharing your experiences with us. So for our audience, please exit this session and rejoin us in just a few moments for session 4. You'll need to go back to that event hub and then click on joint session for session 4. We'll see.